Welcome everyone to this explainer. For the longest time, traditional instruction has leaned super heavily on rote memorization and passive listening. But what if the classroom functioned exactly like the real world? Today, we are exploring an absolutely crucial paradigm shift in education, problem-based learning. This methodology literally transforms the classroom into a dynamic hub of real-world problem-solving, active discovery, and collaboration. It is all about building the critical skills necessary for the future.
Here is the roadmap for our session today. We will be covering understanding problem-based learning, key features of PBL, the learning cycle, teacher and student roles, and finally, challenges and solutions. Section 1. Understanding problem-based learning. Okay, let's dive into this. Problem-based learning, or PBL, is fundamentally a teaching method that places students squarely at the center of the educational experience, instead of the traditional model. A lecture followed by a test to check comprehension, PBL completely flips the script. It actually starts with the problem, specifically a complex, real-world scenario. Knowledge is not just passively handed out, it's actively built as learners collaborate to find solutions. The learning actually happens within the very effort of trying to solve the challenge. Looking at this, we can see exactly what that theory looks like in actual practice. Learners are actively collaborating, brainstorming, and debating. The classroom transforms from rows of passive listeners focusing on a single speaker into a vibrant, collaborative workspace. Knowledge is constructed socially, exactly as it happens in real-world professional environments. This really matters because it shifts education from just knowing facts to actually knowing how to apply them. Section 2. Key features of PBL. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the strict focus on open-ended problems. We are not talking about multiple-choice questions or equations with a single right answer at the back of the book. Because the answers aren't predetermined, like, say, figuring out how to reduce a school's carbon footprint or resolving a local supply chain issue, it absolutely necessitates student-led, independent investigation. Learners must determine what they need to know, research it, and analyze data themselves. Throughout all of this, continuous group collaboration is required to negotiate ideas while the teacher steps out of the spotlight to act purely as a facilitator.
Section 3. The learning cycle. Notice how learning in a PBL environment is an iterative, continuous loop, rather than a straight line culminating in a final exam. When a challenge is encountered, information is gathered, solutions are tested, and the results often lead right back to new questions and deeper investigations. It's an ongoing cycle of cognitive growth that perfectly mirrors how innovation actually works outside the classroom. Let's walk through this engine of PBLs sequentially. Step 1 hooks the learners by presenting a real-world problem. In Step 2, learners must identify their knowledge gaps. Basically, what do they already know, and crucially, what do they actually need to figure out? Step 3 is the heavy lifting, deep investigation and research to fill those gaps. By Step 4, teams synthesize their research to develop viable solutions, which they then present and defend to their peers in Step 5. Finally, Step 6 requires learners to reflect on the entire learning process, evaluating both their solution and how they work together to achieve it. Section 4. Teacher and student roles. Let's move to and see how this builds a completely new and dynamic environment. For educators, transitioning to this model might initially feel like a loss of control, but it's really just a shift in focus. The teacher is no longer the sole content provider. Instead, they become a supportive mentor and facilitator. Think of it more like being a sports coach than a lecturer. The job is to guide the inquiry, ask deep, probing questions that keep learners on track, and support the process of critical thinking rather than simply dictating facts. In stark contrast, learners must step up and take real responsibility for their educational journey. They are no longer passive recipients. They transform into active investigators. They determine what information is needed, seek it out, analyze it critically, and synthesize workable solutions alongside their peers. This profound shift builds immense independence and accountability. Now, because these roles change so drastically, assessment absolutely has to adapt too. A standard multiple-choice test simply cannot capture the depth of this work. Assessment in PBL relies heavily on continuous observation. It means evaluating the teamwork, the research skills, the critical thinking, and the peer negotiations that happened along the way, not just the final presentation or product. Section 5. Challenges and solutions. Shifting entirely to a problem-based model is undeniably an intimidating prospect, but every common classroom hurdle in PBL has a highly practical solution. So the crucial point is that if an unclear problem definition leaves learners lost, the fix is designing an authentic, clearly oriented scenario right from the start. Worried about unequal group participation? Simply implement peer accountability tools so everyone contributes. To manage the chaos of time constraints, setting clear, firm milestones keeps the project moving smoothly. And for the complexity of grading both process and product, multidimensional rubrics ensure assessment remains completely fair, comprehensive, and transparent. To wrap up this explainer, let's consider this final thought. Reflecting on these dynamic learning cycles, the shifting roles, and the immense value of real-world application, how might educators adapt their very next lesson plan into a problem-based scenario? Taking that first step toward open-ended, collaborative discovery might just transform the entire learning experience. Thank you for joining this deep dive into problem-based learning.